Hello everybody, SlimKirby here, and welcome to the next Mario Party minigame ranking. Mario Party 5 is officially over, and now a new day has risen for Mario Party 6. Or, is it that a new night has fallen? Ah, you see what I did there? Including the game's most significant thematic in that particular segue? Anyway, Mario Party 6 is often looked at as the best of the Gamecube Mario Party era games, and even though I'm a little more partial to Mario Party 4, I can't doubt this game's quality, especially as an improvement to the board game direction that Mario Party 5 took. Again, at least in my opinion. I also think this game had quite the improvement in minigame quality as well. It's not perfect by any means, but I do think it performed way better than its predecessor. As usual, the minigames we'll be looking at here are the 4-player minigames, the 1 vs 3, 2 vs 2, Battle, Duel, Bowser, and DK minigames, and the 4 special rare minigames you can unlock as well. The 1 vs 3 category will also include the mic minigames, but not any of the specific mic modes, as they are a bit more extensive to be considered minigames. Also, the less we speak of the mic, probably for the better. So without further ado, let's get things started by grabbing some item orbs and our GameCube mic accessory, sit down with our trusty GameCube controllers, and watch the sunrise, or sunset, together and look at this game's minigame countdown. Hope you guys enjoy, and remember, this list is my opinion, so we will likely not see eye to eye on everything. That's just the way it is. Let's get started. Number 82. To absolutely no one's shock, we have Get a Rope version 2.0. Pitfall is literally just the same game with a slightly different premise. Disappointing that they not only reused a bad minigame concept, but also just the worst one from the previous game. Number 81. Trick or Tree. I do like the visuals of this game, very Paper Mario-esque. Shame that it's completely luck-based and not fun as a result. Number 80. Snow World. I don't like this game, plain and simple. The button rotation you have to do in order to get your snowboard to whirl around is very awkward, and is way too easy to get off sequence with. Even if there are methods people use to slide their fingers appropriately on this one, I don't like that people have to use exploits in order to get this one to work in their favor. It just doesn't work very well for me, and it never has. Number 79, Strawberry SHORTFUSE. I had this game tied in last place with Trick or Tree and Pitfall when I ranked this list the first time. However, I will say that this minigame is slightly better by the smallest of margins, because it's not entirely luck-based. You can follow some of the monkeys and potentially be safe for a round or two. After that, though, it does become a bit of a crapshoot, if I'm being honest. Number 78, Ray of Fright. Interesting concept for a minigame, but terrible execution. Dodging the lasers is so hard as the team of 3, and it's very likely the solo player is going to win as a result, no matter what. Number 77, Same is Lame. I'll take this game over Hide and Sneak and Hide and Go Boom any day, as I feel the 4-player category makes this a little more balanced, but ultimately it's just guessing what you think your opponents will do, which does kind of put us in that luck-based area again. Number 76, Sumo of Doomo. It's like bumper balls, but with a very awkwardly controlling vehicle. You're supposed to use both the control stick and the C stick to move your car, and try to knock your opponent off to win the game. Whenever I play this, though, I just have a really rough time moving my car and readjusting myself if I somehow get offline. And since the arena gets smaller over time, it's very easy to get caught off guard and lose this minigame as a result. Number 75, Trapeze Artist. You have a bunch of Goombas moving around, and your goal is to drop your cage when you believe you have a large number of the creatures in your cage section. However, since the Goombas are constantly moving, there is an element of luck to this game that is very hard to ignore. Sometimes you may just never have a lot of them in your range, while one of your opponents has all the luck in the world, with not only more Goombas, but also the gold variants that will give you more points. Also, because there is a slight delay to when your cage falls, you're not always guaranteed to get all the Goombas you expected to, which makes this game a real annoyance since you only get one shot at the drop. Number 74, Freeze Frame. This is actually kind of similar to the last game in terms of the entire game being decided by one very timely button press, but I'd say this one is better just because the activation is more instantaneous and less dependent on AI movement. Really just comes down to whoever reacts fast enough to what they believe will give them the most amount of points, but still not really a game I'm crazy about. Number 73, Banana Shake. You shake a tree to get bananas, but if an item that isn't a banana pops out, you have to press another button to quickly dodge. Otherwise, you'll get hit and stunned for a few seconds. This will leave you with less time to collect bananas that will ultimately translate to coins when you return to the board game. The reason why this is so low, though, is that it's nearly impossible for me to dodge the object before I get stunned, because the timing window is ridiculously small. I guess the only good thing I could say about this game is that you are at least guaranteed some coins if you don't do that well, but that's really about it, though. Number 72, Pit Boss. This game starts off mindlessly easy, but once Bowser adds 2 spike balls to the madness, it's actually kinda hard to survive this one, especially with the other players trying to survive as well. In fact, I'd say everyone losing is probably a more common occurrence than you'd probably expect it to be. The arena is just too small for what big obstacles you have to dodge here. Number 71, Black Hole Boogie. It's a button masher. And if you think I'm about to pull the same shtick from the last video, I'm actually not going to, because there are a lot less button mashers in this game. Thank God. Number 70, Cog Jog. Normally I'd love this kind of game, but the perspective you are working with, in conjunction with the type of platforming you have to do, on constantly moving platforms no less, turns this game into a bit of a frustration for me. So yeah, I'm actually ranking this pretty low, so sorry to those who actually like this game. Number 69, Talkie Walkie. We have our first appearance of the Mario Party microphone, and I don't think it's utilized very well here. The single player uses the mic to move left, right, forward, and back to get to the end of the course, while the other players try to hit the solo player with spinies. If the player gets hit just once, or if they don't make it to the end of the course in the time limit, they lose. The main issue with this game is mic delay, because obviously the movement will not be instantaneous. This gives the single player a very stunted perception of the time they have to react, and in a game that's purely about avoiding direct attacks that the other team has full control over. I believe there is an exploit for this game to make it easy for the single player, but again, exploits don't make a game better, rather they just show how the game can be broken, so I won't use that as a positive in this game's favor. Number 68, Fruit TALKTAIL. I do have this one higher than the last one because I do feel like this one could have worked better as a concept, especially with the microphone accessory. I just think that it's really hard to balance this idea and have it work optimally as a 1 vs 3 minigame. As it stands now, there are way too many fruit platforms, and they are way too small, where even with potential mic delay, it's hard to gauge if you'll have enough time to make it safely on the correct platform if you're on the team of 3. They could have made the platforms bigger and lessened the total amount of them on the playing field, but then I feel like it makes the game harder for the one player, so it's really hard to say what the best route would have been for this minigame. As much as I hate saying it, when it comes to Simon Says minigames with fruit, this is a case where Fall Guys actually did it better. Number 67, SEER Terror. We have our first rare minigame of the list, and while I do think this game is charming in its own right, it's also just not really a minigame. It's mainly the minigame equivalent of having a fortune cookie, with each playthrough giving you a different cutscene of sorts, with around 17 different scenes to see overall. The different scenarios you can see are pretty fun and have some novelty behind them, but once you see them all, you've pretty much seen and done everything here, and that's pretty much it. Heck, in order to save some time, YouTube has a bunch of videos that just show you every possibility if you do want to see them all. Go nuts. Number 66, Note to Self. This is a game that really surprised me with how much it frustrated me on my most recent playthrough. The idea is to try and touch a note as many times as possible in the time limit, while also competing on the same playing field as your other 3 competitors. Point blank, this game can get pretty messy when everyone is trying to compete and go for the same notes as you. The notes also react to how you collide with them, so hitting them directly from below will reflect them away from you, but if you manage to strike them when they are up against a wall or the floor, you can actually get a nice combo of extra points. However, when everyone is trying to do the same thing as you, it's easy for one player to reap all the benefits and for you to get nothing in return, which makes the game more annoying than anything. This is a shame because I don't think the idea of this game is all that bad, just needed a different way to execute it. Number 65, Gondola Glide. This is a game that needs to be played against human players. If you're up against hard computer players, I'm almost convinced this is impossible unless you are a button-mashing god, because I cannot seem to overtake them here no matter what. Aside from that though, it's a button masher, thankfully not with just one button though, but still a button masher nonetheless, and one that probably lasts a bit too long for its own good. I want to give it a little leeway because I do think the idea is fine, but like I said, it just lasts a bit too long, and against hard computer players, it's way too difficult. Number 64, Word Heard. Another mic minigame, and it's definitely a game where the single player shouts directions at Goombas on which way to move, and the other team just tries to eliminate them. Honestly, just kind of an unremarkable game for me, and another weird usage of the mic accessory. Number 63, Crate or Peril. A 1 vs 3 minigame where the single player tries to eliminate the team of 3, and it can honestly end pretty quickly for the team if they aren't prepared. Not crazy about this game, but I feel like it had potential, but unfortunately it came up a bit short. Number 62, Stage Fright. Pretty much like the last minigame, but with the roles reversed, as the team tries to eliminate the single player. My two big problems with this game are that it only takes one hit to get rid of the single player, and the premise for this game is kinda boring. And while the team of 3 being able to hit and stun their allies, although a good idea for balancing the game, it doesn't do enough to convince me otherwise. This game is heavily in the team of 3's favor. Number 61, PIER Factor. Ultimately a luck-based coin minigame. I like the idea because it's very similar to the concept of Pipe Maze in Mario Party 1, with the added advantage of all players being able to win something, but you really have no control over what you get. You pick a barrel, roll down the pier, switch lanes when you reach an intersection, and not switch lanes if someone meets you at that same crossroads. Even memorizing the lane's contents and your path forward does very little because depending on what your rivals pick, the route is going to be all mixed up anyway. So just pick, pray, and hope that you come away with a good bounty. Not great, but you'll win something at least. Number 60, Light Breeze. 2 vs 2 alternative button masher that doesn't last as long as Gondola Glide, making it a little higher on this list for that sole reason. Being able to see the progress of each person on the team is also a nice touch, but otherwise, that's all I gotta say about this one. Number 59, Treasure Trawlers. Looks like we've made it to the games featuring controller rumble. It works fine enough for this game, I guess, but two issues arise from it. For one, if you don't press the button soon enough, you might overshoot and miss your treasure chest, causing you to sit through the salvage animation before you can move again. 2, there's a luck-based element where a player might find a gold treasure chest that gives 3 points, or a bomb that stuns you and gives 0 points. And you'll have no idea on what you'll be salvaging until the animation finishes. So even if you play this game well, there's no guarantee that you'll come out on top, and that's kinda dumb. Number 58, Something's AMIST. Another rumble-based game, but a little better because you only have one other player to contend with, even if more might be on the line in this game as a result since it's a dual minigame. Once again, it's not bad, but if your opponent gets lucky and finds a quicker route than you, it can be a little frustrating. Number 57, Tally Me Banana. The best DK minigame, and since we're not even in the top 50 yet, wow DK, you didn't have a great run in this game, did you? Anyway, in this game you need to bounce on barrels to grab bananas, potentially bouncing continuously to get as many bananas as you can, while also trying to stay high and dry away from the water below. It's an interesting concept for sure, and I could see people liking this more than I personally do, but bouncing around on barrels and being at the mercy of your opponent's movements is not a thing I tend to enjoy much, and I find myself getting screwed over generally a lot earlier than I want to be. But again, at least you get something for playing this game, I guess. Number 56, Bodybuilder. Could this actually be the laziest 2 vs 2 minigame in all of Mario Party history? Probably not, but this game has literally seen which team can stop a roulette wheel on the correct robot part 4 times first. That's it. Number 55, Sink or Swim. We've seen stuff like this before, and I don't feel like this game does anything unique with its premise, so I don't really have much to say here other than this game exists. Number 54, Dunk Bros. This should have been, no pun intended, a literal slam dunk for Hudson Soft, having brought both volleyball and hockey into the Mario Party realm with decent success in the last 2 installments. But Dunk Bros has always felt a little off to me. Making a basket or a dunk always seems just harder than it should be, and I often find myself struggling to make any sort of headway in this game. If the shooting was retooled just a little bit, maybe to make it a little more faithful and comparable to how it worked in other basketball video games at the time, then I could probably see this scoring much higher. After all, I do love some basketball, but for now, much like with ice hockey in the last game, I think I'd rather stick with Mario Sports Mix Basketball instead. Maybe even Mario Hoops 3-on-3 as well. Number 53, Tricky Tires. Despite my feelings for Sumo of Dumo earlier in this list, I do actually find this minigame to be okay, despite its kind of unconventional movement controls. However, you have more time to adjust the controls, and the game is decently long to make a comeback if you have a bad start, which is something I do appreciate. However, the extending arm obstacles near the end of the track are absolutely obnoxious, and can throw you off completely if you aren't careful. And that's enough to completely kill any sort of motivation you may have to begin with. Number 52, Blooper Scooper. Cutting this game some slack after last time, as it was in my bottom 10 before, but that doesn't mean I still don't have some issues with it. The trick is to try and stay as far away from the center as possible, and avoid obstacles and impediments as you spin around the whirlpool. If you can manage that, it's actually kind of a free survival game. However, if you do get hit, although there is a chance to redeem yourself and swim back to safety, sometimes your character will just get stuck and sink to their doom anyway. I don't know, it's better than I used to give it credit for, but I wouldn't put it anywhere higher than just an okay minigame. Number 51, Garden Grab. Okay guys, let me summarize this okay game for you. You press a button, your partner presses a button, this repeats a few times, then you both must mash another button. Minigame over, and that's pretty much it. Number 50, Snow Brawl. Oh boy, I've always wanted to have a snowball fight, but I kinda wish it would have been a 4-player free-for-all for points, as opposed to a 1 vs 3 elimination contest. The team of 3 tries to knock out the solo player, while the solo player tries to knock out the entire trio, with an entourage of Shy Guys or Yukikis on their side to act as additional firepower and or defenses. I get what the developers were going for with the NPC helpers, giving the single player a chance to overcome the odds and have a fighting chance with a deck stacked against them, but while it does make the game a bit more balanced, I wouldn't say it necessarily makes the game fun or exciting either. And the helpers are ultimately just pawns that will likely just get mowed over quickly, since their AI will not be as effective as the players around them. Plus, in a concentrated effort by the team, they could just target down the single player and end the game immediately with a well-timed onslaught, since only the player needs to be taken down, not the entire team. For the most part, I think this game is okay, and that's really about it. Number 49, Conveyor Bolt. This minigame is actually kind of special for Mario Party 6 because it consists of not just one, but 2 separate games under one single name. Basically, depending on whether it's currently night or day in the board game, you'll actually get a slightly different variation of this minigame. In the daytime version, the single player tries to eliminate the team of 3, while in the nighttime version, the team of 3 tries to eliminate the single player. And in both cases, the fashion of how this occurs remains pretty much the same. Although these could both be considered different minigames, I will still rank and analyze them together for the purpose of not making this already massive list even bigger and more complicated. But yeah, one side tries to eliminate the other, while the other side tries to survive and dodge the other team's onslaught. What makes this interesting though is how both variations are balanced to accommodate the 1 vs 3 nature of this minigame. While it seems like the team of 3 would have an edge in both variations, having more bodies to survive in one variation and having more ways to attack in the other, there is a little more than meets the eye. As the survivors, the team of 3 have more to contend with the moving conveyor belts below and larger lightning bolts and spikes that will knock them out quickly with only a brief touch. On the other hand, when the single player is trying to survive, the conveyor belt is off and the spikes are non-existent, meaning they only have to avoid the lightning bolts, which are significantly smaller than what is produced in the daytime version. It's a really neat idea, and for the most part it works, but with that being said, this game is admittedly not one of my favorites. It's alright, but I think the other 2 games of this very special case utilize the day and night system in a more meaningful way, and are just more fun to play. Number 48, Booed Off the Stage. A pretty basic survival game, just stay away from the pink boos and try to win. Just be careful of the arena's layout, as that could often come back to bite you if you end up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Number 47, Asteroad Rage. Another pretty basic duel minigame. You switch lanes at one at a time to avoid asteroids, and whoever makes it farther without crashing will win the minigame. Switching lanes is usually the deal breaker when it comes to these kinds of games, but I think it actually works pretty well here. I just don't think the game itself is too amazing, just alright. Number 46, Blockstar. And here we have Mario Party 6's puzzle game in the form of Blockstar. And this one can only be played in the minigame room and not in standard gameplay. This puzzle game has a single-player variation of the high score system and a general level progression, and it also has a multiplayer mode where you just play until a person wins or loses. For the most part, this game is fine, but movement of the blocks in this game can be a little awkward, as you aren't dropping blocks down, but rather grabbing blocks from the middle or bottom and transferring them to the top, trying to match color combinations together and getting rid of the star blocks. It can be pretty fun when you have the controls down and you know what to look for when it comes to combo creation, but it definitely does take time adjusting to this format if you are more familiar with other popular puzzle games. Number 45, Shoot Your Mouth Off. I actually think this mic minigame is pretty neat in terms of general concept. The person with the mic yells numbers to activate bullet bills and bob-ombs that will try to attack the other players and knock them out. As long as the other players are attentive with where the attacks are coming from though, I don't think it's too hard for the team to still easily win this. But at least it's an interesting idea for this game, and this underdeveloped mic accessory. Number 44, Cannonball Fun. For being a variant of other fun mech shooters like Shell Shocked and Mario Mechs, it's a little disappointing to see this game only around the halfway point, but to be honest, I'm just not crazy about how the developers executed this one. Instead of eliminating the other players, you're just trying to get 5 points first, and you get a point by just simply hitting another player. Whoever wins this game just comes down to who can position themselves strategically, where they can get multiple people in their range and just alternate shots back and forth until they win. Also, whenever a player gets hit, they are invulnerable for a short time, so if you barely miss your chance to get someone before someone else does, not only do you not get a point, but you're also kind of vulnerable yourself, since you know another player is more than likely nearby. It's not a bad game by any means, but not as great as its predecessors, unfortunately. Number 43, Dark and Crispy. Bowser is definitely doing a lot better than DK this time around, and although this game isn't the best Bowser game, I think it's fine for what it is. The gimmick this time is that the room is completely dark, and Bowser is roaming the arena trying to knock you off. The biggest challenge of this game is not really the darkness, or even Bowser himself really, as his attacks are pretty well choreographed, and you do have a faint light around you that can tell you where Bowser is, and will likely be coming from. Honestly, the biggest challenge is trying to not walk off the arena yourself, and not getting stuck by another player around you. Getting around that though, and this game is honestly pretty decent. Number 42, Daft Rafts. Hey, look, it's platform Peril, but in a raging river instead. And it's alright. I know I had platform Peril pretty high in the past, but this one doesn't do it for me as much. It's also a lot easier for the other players to get in the way and knock you out early, which I'm really not a fan of. But it's only a mild annoyance at worst for a game that's decently alright at best. Number 41, Control Stick. And we're finally in the top half of the list, and we start with a game that I think uses the GameCube controller sticks pretty effectively, with one stick controlling each hand, and you have to Simon Says yourself in the correct directions that the game instructs of you. The game is pretty nicely paced, and the longer it goes on, the speed at which you have to move becomes absolutely insane, and it's not uncommon for the game to just throw you out before you have a chance to react appropriately. I do like the idea of this game, though. Number 40, Odd Card Out. This is basically a more simplified version of Popstar Piranhas from the last game, although now you have to be the first person who guesses the correct difference. My one issue, for some reason, it's a first to 2 scenario instead of a first to 3, and I've always found 3 to be a more sensible number to play to, and in a quick game like this, I really don't see why they stuck with 2. Because honestly, this game's not too bad. Number 39, Insectaride. It's Day at the Races or Random Ride, but they actually removed the luck element. Insectaride is a neat little concept where you choose your vehicle, and each machine controls in a different manner. You could be mashing a button, you could be pressing a sequence of buttons, you could be pressing one button at a time for movement, and then there's the snail. I hate the snail. Really, the snail is the only hang-up I have about this game, because all the other vehicles control fine, and they make this a pretty interesting race for a battle game. Plus, even if you come up short, you could still get a consolation prize for being a runner-up. See, maybe getting rid of luck elements in battle games is a good thing after all. Number 38, Boonanza. It's time to shepherd some booze. You win this game by pushing more booze into your gate over your opponents, and well, that's pretty much all there is to this one. It's a good concept, it works well enough, and I don't really find anything wrong with it. Maybe the boos can be a little finicky at times, but they are, well, the living dead. Number 37, Mass Meteor. It's a race to the end of space as you float through a field of meteorites and try to dodge them as you make your way to the finish line. Although this race is more of a test to see how few times you get hit by the rocks, because this is technically an auto-scroller. Once you make it to a certain point past the last obstacles, just position yourself to the right of the screen and don't look back. I kinda wish the auto-scrolling aspect of this game was removed though, as it might make the race a little more interesting, but it is definitely one of the more skill-oriented duel games. Number 36, Mullet. We have our second minigame that changes based on the time of day, and it's a 2 versus 2 whack-a-mole style game where you jump to strike your targets during the day and ground pound them during the night. I personally prefer the daytime version because striking them from below feels a little more unique and ground pounding the moles feels a little extra. As a 2 versus 2 exercise, it honestly works pretty well, and you can divide up the workload nicely too. Sometimes accidentally nudging a piranha plant, particularly during the daytime version, can be a little obnoxious as it may make you miss your chance to get a point or two, but it just means you have to be a little more precise. Overall, it's a pretty good game. Number 35, Full Tilt. This is a racing game that basically tests your ability to perform optimal movement maneuvers with a bit of jumping as well, while also introducing some tilting platforms to the equation to make it a little more interesting. The first one of the finish line wins, and if you do make a mistake in the second half of the course, the game will graciously put you back at the halfway point instead of all the way back to the beginning. However, the best advice I can give you on this one is move quickly but conservatively, and don't try to cut any corners unless it's absolutely required for you to win. It's a pretty good test of skill, always appreciated for a duel minigame. Number 34, Ozone. This duel game requires a good memory and maybe a little bit of luck if your brain doesn't pan out for you. You have to ground pound 3 panels to have a circle underneath them before your opponent, and the game only gives you a brief window of studying before it spins the field around and hides all of the correct answers. If you are good at memorizing the layout and tracking the circles down, this should be a piece of cake. But if you and your opponent split your correct answers, you could be looking at a hunt to see who can find the last panel needed for victory. Despite that potential luck scenario, I still enjoy this game for what it is, and I don't mind playing it. Number 33, Smash Dance. Continuing the trend of ground pounding panels, this game is a little more upfront with its objective. The only annoyance with this game is that constant opponent interference could not only screw up your routing and what panels you're going for, but also your foes can just get in the way as you try to come out on top of this free-for-all minigame. This game is still pretty solid though, and I can't really find too much wrong with it. Number 32, Popstar. Some other Mario Party minigames should take notice, because this is the route that you should probably go with when making a game where both sides of a 1 versus 3 minigame try to accomplish the same objective with slightly different means. The single player fills a balloon by button mashing, while the team of 3 must coordinate ground pounds to fill up their own balloon, with the first balloon popping being the victor here. Now, I'm not a fan of button mashing, and admittedly the button mashing here does keep this game from being a bit higher, but I do think the challenge of coordinating between the team of 3 is actually a good way to balance this game out, and I like the idea of approaching a general game objective from 2 different and distinct ways. Number 31, Catch You Letter. Here's an interesting hybrid of 2 really awesome Mario Party 5 minigames, both of which I had in my top 5 in the form of Chimp Chase and Flower Shower. However, I can't say this one will get the same exact honors here. I do love the idea of this minigame, and I even gave it a bit of a break because I initially had it lower, but I think the thing that sours me on this minigame is the chaotic nature of the mailman. He is literally sprinting all over the place, and even though I do think this is harder in Mario Party Superstars, it's still kind of obnoxious when you just want to get your letter to the Shy Guy as quickly as possible and get moving to the next letter ASAP. I think if maybe there were more mailman and perhaps an even bigger arena, I think this would have been a bit more balanced, but with only one mailman and everybody crowding around them in the heat of this mad dash for points, it's kinda hard to stay 100% confident in this one, but that's just me. Otherwise, this was a great fusion of 2 ideas from 2 excellent minigames, and it's still in the top half of this list as a result. Number 30, Sunday Drivers. This is without a doubt a much easier version of Mario Party 5's Dinger Derby. This game is less about timing your swing and more about just pressing the correct button, and although it does kind of diminish the skill and challenge a bit, I'm still kind of fine with it, because now it's about how efficient and quick your reaction time is, and not so much about reacting to random assortments of wild baseball pitches. It's not as extensive as Chip Shot Challenge from Mario Party 3, but I always appreciate a good golfing challenge, even with one as basic as this. Number 29, Cash Flow. Is this really the first coin free-for-all we've looked at? Huh, it most certainly is. And although I have this one ranked the lowest, I do think this one is still pretty solid. Both the single player and the team of 3 slide down 2 separate slides. The single player rides a sled that is kinda clunky to move, but it does prevent them from being knocked out by any obstacles, while the team of 3 slide down together with more optimal movement, but the disadvantage of being eliminated if a player hits a spiky shell. Honestly, a pretty solid way to balance this minigame if I'm being frank. Sure, I take the accurate movement and more players over working alone any day, but even if I did get stuck alone by myself, at least I'd know that I would be safe in the long run. Number 28, Money Belt. Well, that didn't take long to get to the next coin minigame. This game, which is also known as X-Ray Payday in Mario Party Superstars, involves every player stationed on a factory conveyor belt with tons of boxes moving towards you, some of which have coins and others with nothing or some booby traps that will stun you for a few seconds, causing you to potentially miss out on some of that sweet gold in return. Your goal is to try and get as many coins as possible, using the X-rays to see what boxes are coming up, and remembering the pattern efficiently so you can get as much money as possible. Honestly, this game is pretty easy, at least for me anyway, and getting the max of 19 coins is not really much of a challenge at all. But I do respect what they were going for with this one, and I'm not going to complain that this pops up during an intense game of Mario Party. I think going forward, if they were to ever bring this game back, they should probably just speed up the conveyor belt a bit more, just to make it a bit more difficult and intense for the people playing. Number 27, Motown. Seriously, Hudson Soft, why do you make household chore minigames so much fun? This is basically Bus Buffer from Mario Party 5, but now it's a 4-player free-for-all where everyone is on the same playing field and the winner is who cuts the most grass with their lawnmower. Moving the mower can be a little awkward at times, and keep in mind, whenever you reverse the movements, you won't mow, so this game is about keeping your movements going at all times, and finding the best ways to route around this patch of grass to optimize on how much you cut. The only negative is that I kinda wish the arena was a bit bigger, because it's fairly easy for your opponents to get in your way, and cause you to miss out on a win if you are unlucky. Aside from that though, it's a great minigame. Number 26, What Goes Up? The last and final one of the day-night cycle minigames, where during the day, your goal is to climb up as high as you can, while the nighttime variation requires you to be the first one to touch the ground. I like this game because it's not as restrictive with movements as it is in Mario Party 5's Leaf Leap, However, the full movement can also be to your detriment, as jumping up needs to be a bit more precise since you are landing on moving creatures, and any missed jump can be even more punishing as you might fall down even further. Still though, it's a fun challenge and kinda cool to test yourself and see how high you can climb up in this one. However, that's just the daytime version. The night version, honestly, I actually enjoyed this one a bit more. It's not too often that you try to fall in a Mario game, so this was a fun way to alter the main objective of the actual minigame, giving you a more unique take on what was already a pretty good challenge as it was. Number 25, Wrestlin' Rapids. It's a survival game, which may not seem that exciting at first, but what I like about this one is that I do think it has some pretty good build-up the further you get into this minigame. It may seem like a basic, bare-bones game at first, but once you get past a certain checkpoint, obstacles start appearing and start making the game a bit tougher, which does make the journey a little more intense and interesting. At the core, it's nothing amazing or too special, but it does its job and is still a fun game to play from time to time. Number 24, Pokey Punch-Out. It's time to beat up some Pokies, and unlike the button-mashing disaster of Mario Party 7's version, I actually kind of like the setup for this one. Every time you destroy a Pokey segment, you get a point, but if you manage to strike the head, you also receive credit for every body segment that's still on the prickly beast, giving a more desirable goal to aim for whenever you choose a Pokey to take down. However, some of the Pokies are too tall to strike, and you're also competing with all of your rivals as well, so dawdle too much and they may get more of the credit with a surprise attack to the head while you're knocking it down to your level. It's nice to have that layer of strategy at your disposal, not just in terms of when to strike a Pokey and how, but also which one to strike as well in order to avoid outside influence. I always thought this was a pretty solid minigame in that regard. Maybe not one of my all-time favorites, but definitely one that strikes a good balance between skill and strategy. Number 23, Stamp by Me. This game kinda reminds me of Pipe Cleaners in Mario Party 3, a game where you need to be quick and decisive with your movements, while also paying good close attention to detail and how your objective approaches you. The goal of this game is to stamp as many pieces of paper as possible, alternating between the two conveyor belts with the A and B buttons. One of the belts moves faster than the other, so you have to decide which one will arrive first, stamp that one, and quickly move to the other one to stamp it in quick succession. And not only that, but you also need to be accurate too, as going just a fraction too late or early might make you miss the points as a result. I think it's a pretty fun and fair test of reflexes, as well as attention to detail, and as a result, it gets some pretty good high marks from me. Number 22, Surge and Destroy. We still got some 1 vs 3 games on the table here, and I find this one to be pretty good. Plus, this is another game that I think utilizes the C-stick in a creative fashion. The single player controls the electric orb in the arena and moves it around with both the control sticks, while the team of 3 must simply avoid it. The lines of electricity connecting the orb will not eliminate players, but they will get stunned, allowing the solo player to take advantage of the situation if they can manage to move the orb appropriately. I can honestly say that I enjoy playing as both sides in this one. It feels rewarding when you catch a player off guard, and equally as good when you can outmaneuver the one player when you get placed on the team of 3. It may not be the most creative idea in the world, but it has a solid foundation of being a really good 1 vs 3 minigame. Number 21, Lab Brats. The final rare minigame of Mario Party 6, and it's a maze game. Maze game? Oh no, not the maze game. Whatever. All maze game jokes aside, this rare minigame is pretty cool, and I honestly could have seen the developers make an actual minigame out of this if they went for it. They could have just maybe made it into one floor while also testing to see how fast they could make it out of the maze, alongside rescuing the trapped critter. However, since it's only a single player rare minigame, they just gave it a couple of floors and made it a time-based challenge instead. This game really had potential though, and I wish they would have done a little more with it, but still a fun game to come back to every now and then when I played Mario Party 6. Number 20, Verbal Assault. We have the final mic-based minigame, and this is hands down the game that works the best with the peripheral. And all the developers had to do was basically copy Mario Mechs. What makes this a mic minigame is that you have to verbalize what attacks you want to do as the single player, and although it shouldn't be necessary to accomplish that in that fashion, it does work pretty well and is perhaps the most sensible use of the mic accessory, where even if you look beyond the mic's usage, it's still a pretty solid and balanced 1 vs 3 minigame, and that's what I'd like to see. Number 19, Light Up My Night. Interesting dual minigame concept where you maneuver your way through a dark arena and light torches. Could be kind of luck-based if a player gets luckier finding the right torches, but it's still pretty fun, and like I said, haven't really seen anything like this before. Number 18, Throw Me a Bone. Mario Party 5 had Chomp Romp, which had a similar premise and a closely similar placement here in the rankings. Mario Party 6, on the other hand, gives us this minigame, in which I think I do ultimately prefer the previous minigame, but this game has some good merits as well. The big trick of this game, though, is aiming your throws appropriately to get the best movement out of your companion and trying to avoid the impediments in your path. And hey, even if you do mess up, you will have an unobstructed path right in front of you, which can get some time back or potentially snag the win back from the clutches of your mistake. And hey, that just means that it's never truly over until it's over. It's a pretty good free-for-all and can get pretty intense and exciting as well. Number 17, Burn Style. We finally have a real team-based hot rope jump on our hands, and it's in the form of Burn Style. This game is just, on the whole, really solid. It starts out slow, then starts picking up, and ultimately just leads to an endurance test of which team can keep up with their hitting bar better. Unlike Hot Rope Jump and Tick-Tock Hop and other games of this nature, you're not really encouraged to go for any records here. The game doesn't even keep track, so just do your best and time your jumps appropriately. Or at least hope your partner can pick up your slack if you get knocked out early. I still really like the game though. I just wish it had a little more going for it. It's still really, really good. Number 16, Cashapult. The final coin free-for-all is here, and I actually really enjoy the team-based aspect of this game. You and your partner take turns, not really jumping, but moving your body in the air to try and collect as many coins as possible. And you both have 2 air launches, so even if your first jumps aren't extremely ideal, you can plan around your progress with your following jumps, which makes it a great exercise in teamwork and adaptation. There aren't a lot of coins in play either, so even if one team is extremely good at this game, they're not going to get extremely far ahead in the coin game either, so it feels pretty balanced all things considered. Number 15, Slot Trot. Imagine the precision of Mario Party 3's Silly Screws, but now it's a team-based minigame where you match pictures. This game is really good, another solid 2 versus 2 I must say, where I feel like its only trouble spot is trying to get the slot machine to stop properly, as sometimes you might just barely roll over or not roll far enough into the frame of what's acceptable for a correct answer, and any little adjustment could throw your side in the opposite direction. Once you get past that though, this game is pretty fun. Also, first to 3 points in this game, so I don't know why other games don't follow this logic. Looking at you, odd card out, and other game to be named later. Number 14, T-5. Picture Toad in the Box, but without the dice block and more focus on a true timing exercise. And yes, that's pretty much what you get here, just a duel game based on timing 5 ground pounding inputs properly. Like Toad in the Box, the last input might start coming down to guessing more than actual timing, but if you give yourself a good start, you should have plenty of time to win here. Feels like a pretty solid duel minigame to me. Number 13, Dust Till Dawn. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. What's with household chore minigames being so good in Mario Party? In this game, it's a 1 versus 3 test where one player tries to dust off all the objects in a small room, while the team of 3 work together in a much bigger room. Whichever side cleans their space first is ultimately the winner. I do feel like this is pretty well balanced, although I do personally prefer working alone in this one, just because it's easier to narrowly focus on just going in a circular fashion around the room, while the team of 3 might clash a bit on how to appropriately divide up their area. Still though, even with that slight preference, I don't mind playing as the team either. I just think this is another case where the simplistic nature of this minigame just works in its favor in making a fun and accessible experience. Number 12, Balldozers. And if that 1 versus 3 minigame wasn't enough for you, here is another 1 versus 3, and the highest ranked minigame of this particular category. Balldozers is funnily enough not that much different from the last game we talked about, and much like Dust Till Dawn, the thing I like about this game is that both teams are essentially doing the same thing here, but it still manages to keep a nice balance between the sides despite the obvious appearances. Even though the team of 3 has more bodies to work with, the solo player has a smaller ball, so they ultimately don't need to remove as many pegs as a team of 3 does. It's all about finding the optimal route through this puzzle, and it never really feels like any side here is disadvantaged over the other. Yeah, you can get more done with a team of 3, but I also don't have to worry about people getting in my way or relying on your partners to follow your line of thinking, while when you're alone, you can kind of just do your own thing and work towards your own goal individually. It just feels very balanced for both sides, and it makes me happy to see this game come up no matter what side I end up on. Number 11, Dizzy Rotisserie. It's time to get busy, or rather, dizzy, with the final Bowser minigame of Mario Party 6. And as you can see, I think it did quite well for itself, landing just shy of the top 10. Picture Dizzy dancing from Mario Party 2, but with the redefined objective of just escaping the room. Honestly, despite how simplistic this is, I think it really works for a Bowser game. It is incredibly easy though, and a skilled player should have no issue escaping this one. Unlike last game's Cajun Cookin', I at least feel like this requires a bit more skill, and does have a small sense of pressure buildup the closer you get to the exits, wondering just how much time you have left before the beast before you strikes. Also, why did they not bring this one back in Mario Party Superstars, yet they picked the other 2 Bowser games instead? Never really understood that. Number 10. Well guys, we've made it to the top 10, finally. And the first game we have is a rather simple game with a pretty simple premise. Granite Getaway. And no, I promise you, this is Mario Party 6 and not an Indiana Jones movie. Honestly, this game is actually pretty similar to a skateboard scamper or Cheep Cheep Chase type of scenario. But what elevates this game over those games is really just the fact that it's less of a race and more of a simple auto-moving survival game, which I think is probably best for this type of minigame scenario. Make the game a little more difficult and give everyone credit for just making it to the end. That's simple. And I think this game does a pretty good job of reaching that minimum. I also feel like it's fairly easy to react appropriately to this game as well when it comes to jumping over and clearing the obstacles in your path, something that easily could have been an issue with a perspective of this nature, but this game manages to avoid that pitfall. I'm probably not as crazy about this game as other people might be, but I do think it's good enough to still make it into the top 10 of Mario Party 6. Number 9. We have a pretty quick one and done type of minigame, as a skilled player might finish with this one in a matter of seconds, but at 9th place, I have Memory Lane. I'll say it right now, this game's only issue is the fact that it's only one round. If it was a game that had multiple variations in rounds, much like Mario Party 5's Hotel Goomba for example, I think this game could have been a big contender for the top spot. However, since it doesn't, it's going to stay right here in 9th place, as a game I really like, that could have been even greater with more substance. Still though, I think it's a fun test of memory for how short it is, and feels super rewarding when you can immediately knock out the right path with not only 0 errors, but also without stopping. It's a pretty fun challenge for me. Number 8. There was a game in Mario Party 5 that was actually quite similar to this concept, but I feel like Mario Party 6 did it a little more justice in how it approached this objective. In 8th place, we have the dual minigame LUNAR-TICS. For this game, you have to land on solid ground at the approximate time, and whoever lands closest to the required time is the winner, regardless if you go under or over. I said it before and I'll say it again, I love minigames of this type, and this game is easily no exception. More than that, giving the players the ability to slow down using the rocket thrusters adds an additional layer of skill, and also a general personal touch and strategy as it allows you to slow yourself down as and when you see fit. It's very simple, yes, but probably the game I'm hoping for whenever the dual roulette shows up for me. Number 7. Mario Party 6 really did a great job with team-based minigames this time around, and I feel like for my 7th place recipient, Jump the Gun, this was a unique way to test a cooperative experience between you and your partner. One player makes the path by shooting bullet bills into a track, while the other player must jump between them until they get to the finish line. Now, it's no secret, the jumper has the harder job here, and I admittedly would rather not have the pressure of making the jumps if I had the choice, especially when any missed jump can lead to lost time, and probably the loss in general. However, it is a very unique concept, and I like how the gunner has the option to not only make the optimal jumping route, but also the option to give their partner some extra safety platforms as well. It just feels like a really nice co-op experience, and something we just haven't really seen much before in Mario Party, and I think that's pretty awesome. Here's the kicker though. If you thought this was the best 2 vs 2 minigame in Mario Party 6, well, let's just say you haven't seen anything yet. But stay tuned, we are about done after all. Number 6. Well, as I just said, you won't have to wait too long, because at 6th place, we have Pixel Perfect. This game continues the trend of working together to match the picture in the middle, and you do this by ground pounding the squares to match the layout you see in the center. I wouldn't say working together is as impactful in this one compared to some of the other games we've seen. Heck, this could have easily been a dual minigame or even a 4-player one in an alternate universe, but it still works alright just the same, and I don't really feel like your partner can get in the way as much as they could in a similar game of this nature. To me, the only problem with this game is that I feel like it's a bit too short. Once again, it's a first to 2 points scenario, not 3, and that just makes an already quick exercise even quicker. Giving it more rounds probably wouldn't make a huge difference in the rankings, since we are close to the top after all, but could have potentially gotten this game into the top 5 at least. Number 5. Round and round the circuit we go. Where do we stop? Bzzz. Oh hey look, it's Circuit Maximus. This is a very simple racing game where you go around the circular chamber, trying to avoid all the amps you can, and being the first player to the finish line in their own individual cage. Amps are absolutely everywhere in this game, so coming out of this one unscathed, well, you'd be a dedicated master at threading the needle, because that task is not easy. Sure, the first few sections are easy enough, with barely a handful of obstacles, but by the time you get close to the end, hell, it'd probably be faster just to take a hit and use the invincibility frames to plow through, as opposed to waiting for an opening. I guess that's what I ultimately like about this one though. It doesn't necessarily reward speed or patience in any one major way, but rather a combination of both. You need to be and should be moving at all times. You're against 3 other players after all, and you should try to avoid what you can, because getting hit early when it's easier to avoid the amps can ultimately be a time sink. So having the ability to just move without hesitation, and not let the mistakes hold you back, is a skill that can and likely will give you success here. Plus, it's a new record minigame, which means you have an added challenge of seeing what time you can finish with and try to set a high score. It's a really great minigame and one that's always stuck with me from Mario Party 6. Number 4. I hope you guys aren't hungry for ice cream or anything, because this next minigame really has nothing to do with ice cream. Just has the distinction of being named after a popular flavor, and that would be Rocky Road. Once again, we have another 2 vs 2 minigame, and if I had to compare this game to anything, it's kind of a progression-based version of Destruction Duet from Mario Party 2. Both you and your partner are performing demolition duty, as this road you're being driven on is completely full of rocks and big boulders that you have to take down with punches and kicks, and the first team to arrive at the finish line will be the winners. The best way to approach this game is to divide the workload up evenly. Work together with your partner without being directly next to them. And trust me, that's way more important than you think it would be, because accidentally hitting your partner with your attacks can be a bit of a time drainer here. However, when you're on a good run with your teammate, it feels really rewarding and is another great team exercise of Mario Party 6. I do wonder though, why isn't there a new record system for this game? It's the same rock layout every single time, and it's a race. Not to mention, you can't interfere with the other team at all. Really weird how that isn't a thing, but I digress. Number 3. Clocking in at the bronze medal position for Mario Party 6 is a minigame type that I think we'll be seeing a bit more as we move forward, and although this isn't necessarily the originator, I do like what this one has brought to the table. We have Hyper Sniper, the highest ranked battle game of Mario Party 6. Quite simply, this is just a test of how fast your reflexes are, and how efficient you are at obtaining points as you try to score as high as you can before the time is up. Each target has a different point value, with the smaller the target, the higher the points, and a Bowser target that will shamelessly remove all the points you have at your disposal. While that does seem like kind of a dick move though, the Bowser targets are pretty big, and nobody should be aiming for or hitting those anyway. This game is honestly just a really nice test of skill that makes sense as a battle game. It's really fun to boot, and I don't have much more to say about it than that. It's really good and just one of the best that Mario Party 6 has to offer. Number 2. We've got one last 2 versus 2 game for you, and once again, I have to state this for the record. Why are cleaning games and games based on household chores so much fun in Mario Party? Clean Team is the name of this gem, and it's pretty much what I love about cooperative minigames. Both players must work together and do so in an orderly manner, as one player needs to spray the windows before the other player wipes the windows. So not only is it a test of speed, but also routing efficiency, as you need to find the optimal route for going up the ladder and getting from window to window, while also not getting in the way of your teammate that's following or leading you. And that's pretty damn cool. Even if you are fast and still don't manage to get the win, you can't feel as mad about the loss, because that just means your opponents just routed the course better than you did. And I think that leads to some pretty fair and fun competition. Seriously, this may be one of the best 2 versus 2 games in all of Mario Party history, and I just like what it did here in Mario Party 6. It easily ranks as the second best minigame in this installment, and is a worthy recipient of the silver medal. Now, what about that gold medal, though? Number 1. If you've been keeping track of the minigames, not to mention my previous Mario Party 6 list, you probably know what's here at the top spot, because for the first time since Mario Party 1, we have a returning champion that manages to defend its title in the form of Lift Leapers. Lift Leapers is quite easily the most Mario of the Mario Party minigames. It's pure platforming, and it's pure platforming in a way that's not at all repetitive and samey, like it is in games like Platform Peril, Teetering Towers, and even What Goes Up in this game. And remember, I like those games. I just like this game way more, and I think it's easy to pick this one over the others because it's more than just jumping on the same platform until you reach the end. This minigame has multiple rooms, and each room has a different set of moving platforms you have to take in order to clear it. One room has rotating platforms, one has vertically moving elevators, another room has spike obstacles you have to jump over. There's just a lot more variety here, and that's something I really love about minigames when they offer that level of variety. Now, given this is the same course every single time, so once you have the optimal path, the timing for all the specific jumps you need to make, it's gonna feel pretty easy. And games with incredibly skilled players are quite literally gonna come down to the most corner-cutting of differences. But it's still an incredibly fun minigame, and one that immediately stood out to me as not only one of the best minigames in this game, but also perhaps the entire series. And with that, I can say for certain that Lift Leapers is my favorite minigame in Mario Party 6. Well guys, 82 minigames and a first script draft that was originally 33 pages in Microsoft Word later, we have come to the end of Mario Party 6. The sun may be setting on this video, but Mario Party 6 will always be one of my all-time favorites in the series, and it's a game that I find myself coming back to on several occasions. So I guess much like the day and night system of this game, I suppose there's never really a bad time to play Mario Party 6, is there? But I digress. This is the part of the video where I need to mention that I am a Mario Party freak. And being such a freak for this series, I play it every single Friday afternoon on my Twitch channel for an event I like to call, Thank God It's Mario Party Friday. Every week I play a board or two, depending on the game I'm playing of course, and sometimes I also try to create tier lists or preliminary rankings of some kind that will ultimately become these ranking lists after a bit of my own personal retooling. Right now I'm working on perhaps the most black sheep of the series, Mario Party 10, and once I'm done with that, I'm going to start playing through all of the handheld series as well. So we'll have a lot of underplayed, underappreciated, and underrated games to look at as well. So try to join up with us every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time if you want to check out the action. Well, we have one last GameCube title to go, so next time we'll look at Mario Party 7. And if you thought 82 was a lot of minigames, well, Mario Party 7 doesn't have too much more, but it's still more. And this list took forever, so expect another long one, folks. Whew. See you guys then. This has been SlimKirby once again for another Mario Party ranking video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Later, folks, and remember, party on.